Yes, so recording the session now and sharing my screen now. There we go. Good. Great to have you all back. So last week we discussed the enums. We've seen if, switch, string methods, string builder. We've seen quite a lot last week. This week is also going to be really cool because we are going to dive into arrays, multidimensional arrays, and all sorts of loops. Let's see. So first, again, we're going to start with discussing the homework, and then I'll show you around these topics, and you'll be able to ask questions in the meantime. Let me open the chat as well. So lots of screens open. So let's move on to Intellij first. This sort of should have been your starting point for the homework. And I have the homework open here. Ah, yes. So we're going to add an enum to the team class. Right, so what would I need to do first in order to be able to do that? Please write your answer in the chat. Very quiet still. No one? Okay, so what we would have to do first is create an enum in order to be able to give this as a property to our team class. So let me right click on tournaments and say new Java class. And here I'm just going to say status of the team of the tournament. So let's go. Enum. There's probably a more official word for this, but I don't know. So then you can write me, what are the options for your team? Oh yes, they could have one. Yes, so they could be the winner or a loser. Yes, so maybe just out of the competition or still active, still participating. Maybe something else. Points you can win. Yes, I want to do it later, but maybe like something like, I don't know. I said if they're disqualified, is that a word? Is it? It's in Dutch, I think. Yeah, so they're still running up. Yes. Well, let's go for winner, out, and still in the game. Yeah, I don't know the word. Let's just go for they're still active. They're still participating. Oh, Remco's asking me a good question. He says enum can only have words, right? No numbers. Well, you cannot start an enum with a number. So I cannot say something like for something, because this is not considered an enum. But what I could do, if I would really want all my enums to have some sort of numeric value attached to it, I could say something like this here, and it's first going to get worse before it gets better. So hold on. There we go. And then here I can say that my enum has a private int number. And then I would have to do something weird. I'd have to make a constructor for my enum that takes a number. So there we go. And all of a sudden you see that now it says, oh, this is what you have. Oh yeah, but it's not public, it's private. It's implicitly private, so it's redundant to put it in there, but I'm allowed to. So let's say this point number equals number. There you go. So it would look something like this if we really want to give it a number. But we didn't do this last week. And well, it's not really for beginners. That's true, Remco. But if you are going to do the OCA 8 exam, you will have to know this. So yeah, but maybe it's not for now, but it is for before the exam, that's for sure. Yeah, so I gave my enum a property, and then I gave all the enum values. I gave a value for that property. And here I'm just saying what needs to happen when the enum is created. That's all. So this is the code that runs in order to create the enum. And it's creating the enum with a 9 here, with the 3 there, with 2, 3, 4 over here. So I'm just going to leave this in. Don't worry too much about it if you kind of missed it, but you will have to know this eventually. So here we go. Here's our team class. And I'm going to give this enum to our team class. I'm going to say status. There you go. Questions about this? No? Who did the homework? Please tell me. Good. Yes, okay, good. Then you probably also made some sort of main method somewhere, right? I could make a separate class for this, but you could also have added it to the tournament class. But I'm going to make a separate class for it. I'm going to call it app. And I'm going to give this app the special main method. And in this main method, I'm going to create a team. Create a team looks like this. Team. And then I said, give it all the properties. Well, what properties do we have? All is a lot, isn't it? Let's just give it a name. Superheroes National. I don't know. Sounds like a team, right? And I'll give it a status. I'm going to say team.status equals status.active, like this. And then I ask you to use an if statement to see if the team has a name of more than 10 characters and print something about it. Well, it sounds like a silly exercise, but clearly I wanted you to practice with if statement, with the string methods, and with printing something and thinking about this. So I'm going to create an if statement, and I'm going to say if team.name.length, let's see, is bigger than 10. Yeah. It's bigger than 10. Well, then we're going to say that's a long name, and then we'll just add the team name to it. And I'm just gonna make some silly else. That's name of less than 10 characters. And the team name. So clearly this one is now going to print that's a long name. So there we go. We'll run this and see what happens. Oh, of course. Let me fix this. See if I fixed it. Okay, so let's fix it properly this time. What are my settings here? Oh. Yes, it looks better. So it prints, that's a long name, Superheroes International. Are there any questions about this? Please let me know in the chats. No? So Remco is asking, why don't you put the enum in a class? Well, I could put the enum in a class. So I could say that here I'm going to make, inside this class, I'm going to make an enum. And that enum is going to be status. Is that okay? Well, status 2 maybe is better. Yes. Let's status 1. status 2, something like this. But if then at some point I realize that I also want to use the status for the players in the game, because they could also be active or winners or losers or whatever, then right now I cannot reach it nicely. So in order to be able to use the enum at more places, I'm putting it in a separate file. Does that make sense, Remco? Yes, good. So let's remove our second enum from team. Yes, you can add helper methods in the enum class. I'm not sure what I feel about that though. You can even do this. Just me running my enum. So you can run your enum if you give it a main method. That's weird, right? I think this is the ugliest Java thing I've seen. It's basically just because an enum is a class beneath the surface. Please don't do this. I learned this from a student actually, who at some point asked, can you run enums? I was like, I hope not, but you can. So these are my fun facts about enums. Any other questions at this moment? No? Okay, good. Then let's see what's new today. Yes. So discuss homework, check, we did that. And today we're actually going to discuss arrays. And this is really nice because if you look at our project so far, or tournament project, it's been screaming for some sort of way to have more than one value inside one value. So here's one way to do that. Oh, I need to fix my slide. Hold on. So here's one way to have more than one value inside one value. We'll learn, I think next week. No, the week after that, we'll see better ways to do that with list and with the map, etc. But for now, our way to go is arrays. So I already said array is a way to store multiple values inside one type of value. And this type of value would be of type array. And you recognize arrays with these square brackets that are at the back. So here you see an example on the slide. It says string, and then some sort of name. I called this string array, could call it anything, equals, and then between curly brackets, the value of this array between quotation marks. So this string is a string with two values in it. This is a string array with two values in it, one string hi and one string hello. So what's funny about arrays is just like anything in Java, they start to count at 0. So if we would ask Java, so what's the length of this array? It will tell us the length is 2, just as with the string length. But if you are going to look at the indexes of the array, it's going to be 0, 1, and so 0, 1, and in this case 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But the length of this is 5. So then it's just counting the number of elements from 0. From 1. Then one limitation, and that's that an array has a fixed length. So you cannot append anything to an array. So if you create it with length 5, you can replace objects. You can set objects back to null and ULL, so nil. But you cannot change the length after creating the array. If you change the length, you're just creating a whole new object. That's the only way that you can change the length of some sort of reference. That's the only way to change the length is just by creating a new array object. And the good news is you can use arrays for any object. So our own team object, it could be an array. So you can probably guess the homework from here. Here's some more examples. On this slide, we see 4 arrays. The first 2 are up here. We have the string array. It has some text in there and more text. So this is a length 2. And we also see the string array, which we create in a different way. We say is new string 2. So here we are creating an array of length 2, so the maximum index is 1. And here you see that I'm giving values to the string array 2 with the square brackets and the index number. And if I use an index that's out of the length of the array, it gives us the array index out of bounds exception. Here you see one from int, and here you see one from teams. Any questions about this? Get some no's. Is this clear? Good. So someone's asking, in what situation would you like to use this? Well, for example, Daniela, in our team situation, so our tournament, it has teams. So instead of having only one team as a variable, we could say this is not, a tournament doesn't have one team, it has a team array. And then we can just insert all the teams inside that array. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Shall I do some coding? Maybe that can still help. Or make it worse. Let's see. Let's go here. Get rid of our tiger. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create an array int. And I'll call this int array. And I'm just going to add some integers to it. Arrays can contain double values. As you see, I have 2 7s in there. That's perfectly fine. It can have duplicate values. So what's the length of this array? Well, 1, 2, 3, no, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the length of this array is 8, meaning that our maximum index is going to be 7. So if I print this, what will this print? Yes, I'm going to quite some 2s. This will print 2. That's correct. Let's prove it. There it is, 2. So then, if I'm going to say int array 3 equals something like this, and I print it again, what will this print? Some people are telling me out of bounds, and some people are telling me 2, 3, 2. So it's good that I'm asking this. It will indeed print this thing. So what this is doing, this int array 3, it says access the third element from the array, which is 0, 1, 2, 3, is this one, 2, and override its value, which was 2, with 2, 3, 2. So just inserting a new value in there. So instead of this, after this line, the array looks like this. So this will print 2, 3, 2. If I want to go out of bounds, because I can do that too, I would have to insert an index that's higher than 7, because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So int array 8, it doesn't exist. So if I try to print this, or even assign a value to this, it will give me an array index out of bounds exception. So let's see. So it prints first 2, then 2, 3, 2, and then it says index out of bounds for length 8 at this line. So it's saying at this line, I'm getting an array index out of bounds. Well, that's what I predicted. Does that clear it up for the people who answered out of bounds to the previous question? Getting some yeses. That's good. Are there any questions up till this point about arrays? What is the purpose of 2, 3, 2? Well, that's a deep question. There is none really. I just put it there to just prove the point that you can override its value. Okay, getting some question. Only enums you cannot override. No, enums, they have fixed labels. You cannot change them. Get another question. Is there a possible way to expand the length of an array? No, you cannot, but we'll see later that if you need to do that, you'll grab a list out of the collection framework. And then, whoa, one more question. Is there a way to, no, so you cannot add anything to an array, but you could override an array. So this int array that I made up there, I can assign a new array to it like this. So now it's much longer, but then all of this, it's just a different object and this is just a new object. So this is pointing to the new object now instead of the old one. I'm good. Let's move on to the multidimensional arrays. So we just saw that an array contains multiple values of the same type. Well, you can also have multidimensional arrays, and this is pretty much an array in an array. So you see an example on the slide, and this might be a bit difficult to get your head around, but just think of it as a shopping list that contains a shopping list. So it's sort of a list of lists, or, well, it's actually not lists, but it's arrays. So in this array, there are other arrays of a certain type. So on this slide, we see an array of strings. So it's a string, two-dimensional string array. So it's there's two arrays in the first array. So this is the first array, and this is the array in the array number 1, and this is the array in the array number 2, or actually index 1 and index 0. And length of both arrays in the array are 4. Does that make sense? Getting some yeses, that sounds good. So in this case, 0, 0 is welcome, and for example, 1, 2 is bye. So how do you create one, you might wonder? Well, it looks a bit like this. On top, we see two-dimensional string array, and we say that it's an array of length 3, and we're actually not using all of the length. We are just giving values to the first array and the second array, and these then get their own values again. So you can draw this like we did over here, and then it actually only has these 6 squares in it. Yes, some good questions. The first one is, I only have to specify the length of the first array. Yes, that's correct. So this one you can leave out, or you see it on here actually. So they don't need to be of the same length. You don't need to specify it until you create them. So we say that we make a two-dimensional int array over here, twice the square brackets, and then we say it has a length of 2, this first array. So we have a 0 and a 1. And in there, we can put new int arrays, and they can be of any length. And then I'm getting a quite complicated question, I think. Is there a valid way to create 3 until n-dimensional arrays of arrays? I bet there is, but you just use it with these square brackets all the time. So you will get many, many square brackets at some point. Questions about this? So I'm getting another question. The size of the array would become the max size of the record. I'm not really sure what that question means. Yes, so this first one here, you'll have to specify this size, because the first time you're actually only creating an array of arrays. So this array of arrays, this is our first array actually. So when we're only creating this one, you only need to specify the length of this first array that contains the arrays. And when you put the new arrays in there, that's the moment where you need to know the length of these new arrays. So let's see, I'm getting... so someone's asking for a real case where we use a multi-array. Well, actually, one where you use one is anytime you do calculations with a matrix, you can be using arrays, multidimensional arrays. And lots of data processing, you can also use the multidimensional arrays for those purposes. Let's see. And then in the second example, size will become 2, 4. Let's see. Yes, sort of. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, so this one would be 2, 4, and then this could fit in there. Yes. All right. So we've seen arrays and we've seen multidimensional arrays. It would be nice if there were some sort of function that we could use to go over these arrays, right? And luckily we have a control flow for this, and these are the loops. So actually we have 4 different kind of loops in Java, but they're all kind of the same. You use a loop to repeat a certain bit of code a number of times. The main distinction is between a for loop and a while loop. The for loop repeats it just a certain amount of times, and the while loop repeats it until a certain condition is no longer true. So let's start with the while loop. You see a small example on the screen here. We have an integer x, it's 0, and we say, as long as x is smaller than 4, do something. And in this while loop, we actually increase x with 1. If you wouldn't do that, this is not actual code, by the way, this is just the idea of code, pseudocode. If we wouldn't increase x in this while loop, and x would not be increased somehow from outside, this would mean that this loop would run forever. Does that make sense? Yes, good. So let's have a look at the 4 kind of loops that we are having. Here you see the first one, it's the while loop, I just discussed it. Then we have another one. And this, it looks more difficult, but you'll find that in real life, you'll be using this one way more than that one, or at least I find myself using this one way more than that one. I think that's a better way to put it. So what's happening here? Well, we start with the keyword for, and then we open the parentheses, and we have 3 blocks in here. They're separated with the semicolons. So we have a block here and one there. So this first block, we specify some sort of variable that we use to evaluate something on. So here we're saying integer I is 0. And here we specify the condition. We say I is smaller than 10. And then here we say I++. And this I++, it's executed every time after this code has been run. So look at the flow of this for loop. It starts with saying int I is 0. Then it's going to check the condition. It says, okay, 0, yes, it's smaller than 10, so this is true. And then if this is true, it's going to execute this code and it's going to print 0. That's all the code that there is in the for loop. And then it's going to go here saying I++. So then I becomes 1, and we're going to check again. 1 is smaller than 10. Okay, let's print 1 and increase it again. So it becomes 2. Again, we're going to check 2. 2 is smaller than 10, print 2. So we do this until I becomes 10. We check 10, it's not smaller than 10. Then we don't execute this, and we're done with our for loop. So that's the for loop. And it looks more complicated than a while loop, but in practice it's quite nice because it's easier to forget to, I don't know, do something in a while loop that you actually break out of the while loop. It's quite easy to actually get stuck forever in here, and here this usually doesn't happen. Then we have a variation to the while loop. It's a do while loop. So what the do while loop does, it's almost the same as a while loop, but this time it always does this code one time. So it's first going to run the code and then check its condition. And this is useful when you want to do something that needs to be done at least once. You maybe get a value for a certain variable or make a connection to something, try to get something from outside. So this is something you want to do at least once and then check whether it's successful. And then if it's not successful or whatever the condition was, you do it again and again check for its condition. Do it again, check for its condition. So the main difference between the while loop and a do while loop is that the do while loop executes once before checking its condition. And it looks a bit funny. It has this semicolon after the while. And you should not do that here, because if you put a semicolon there, it considers that the end of the while loop. Usually it also means that your code will run forever. And then we have one other for loop, which is also something you'll use a lot. And this is the so-called Foreach loop. And what this code does, it's looping over every element in some sort of collection. In this case, in an array. So it says for every string s, in array, string array, print s. So if this array has 4 elements, say hi, hello. Okay, let's say it has 2 elements, hi and hello. The first time it's going to iterate hi is going to be s, and it's printing hi. The second time it's going to iterate over it, hello will be s, and it's going to print hello. Yes, it's an implicit iterator, and actually if you look at the compiled code, you can see that it has reworked it to a traditional for loop. It's quite funny. And then here I've made a loop in a loop to show that I could print all the elements of a 2-dimensional string array. So I have for every array, string array s in 2-dimensional string array. And then for every string in s, because this is a string array, print, this should be actually str. That's kind of funny, because now it's just printing s as long as the array is. Do you see that? That this is a, well, it will compile and it will run, but it's clearly not what I meant to do, because I wanted to print str, so every value of in the string array s, but instead I'm printing the string array s for every value in the string array. So this is not really, if you see why it's funny, you understood it, I guess. If you just don't think it's funny, that's fine too. Any questions about this? I will repeat the last loop, but instead I will just do it right now. Let's go to Intellij. And let's make an int array that's ints. And I'm just going to say new int, 3 something. There's going to be quite some typing actually. So I'm going to say ints 1. No, let's just do it like this. Int 1 is, and then just go like this. There we go. And int 2 is 7, 8, 9. And then let's do int 3 is, let's do 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to put all these newly made arrays inside my top array. So here first, just kidding, we start at 0 clearly. Up. So I'm gonna say int 0, 0, it's let's say it's int 1. What's wrong with this? Oh yes, because now it's fine. So it's an array in arrays. If you do it the other way around, you just want to put one int in there. So if I would say this, This is not possible, I guess. But it thinks it's possible. That's fine too. So if you go for the exact value with 2 arrays, it's only 1 int that's in there. So if you go 1 back like this, it's an int array. And like this, it's just 1 int. Does that make sense? So now I'm gonna put in the ints arrays. Ints 2 is ints 3. There we go. So I've made a 2-dimensional int array of length 3. Then I made 3 1-dimensional int arrays, and I've assigned these to the 2-dimensional int array. Does that make sense? Let's hope so. So now I want to loop over all the elements in ints. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say for, and then for every int array I in ints. And here I'm going to say for every int I n in I, I'm going to print in. So what I'm doing here, I'm printing every value in my int array, and I'm doing that for every int array in my ints. So let's turn this bit off because it throws you out of bounds. So here you see, so it starts with 4, 5, 6. This one, it's being assigned here. 7, 8, 9, and then 1, 2, 3. So if I want to have it in the correct order, I would have to put this one here, ints 1 here, and ints 2 here. Does that make sense? Yes, so this is the example of the 2-dimensional array loop, and I'm getting one more question about how this for loop, the regular for loop is working. So let me show that. Int I is 0, and I is smaller than 10, I++. So it automatically indeed stops at 10. Or actually just before 10, because 10 is not longer smaller than 10. So it's checking this condition, and based on this condition being either true or false, it decides whether to execute this code still. As soon as this condition becomes false, it quits the whole loop. Ah, good. And yes, this is a very odd order of things. That is correct. Any other questions up to this point about all the loops? Someone's asking, so if we replace in with I on line 27, no, this won't give an error. It will just print nonsense a few times, 3 times or 9 times actually. Check it out. So it will print this. So it will just print the int array 3 times for all of them because they all have length 3. So if I make this one a bit bigger, for example, it's the address to the array. Yes. So if I make this int 3 bigger, it's assigned to the first one. So this first one will appear 6 times. Let's show it. Yes, there you go. Any questions? Yes, so Leon has given everybody a piece of advice. Study this topic well, because Oracle really likes it on the exam. Yeah, so the main thing you shouldn't fall for is that you cannot extend the length of an array. And that's also one other thing I want to show, and that you cannot access elements that are bigger than the length because you get the array index out of bounds. But what you also cannot do, you need to make sure that everything that you put inside your array is of the correct type. So this is an int array. I cannot put something like this in there because this is a double. You get a compiler error if you do. It says required type int provided double. So if you say it's an int array, make sure to only put ints in there. So someone is asking for the do-while loop. Let me show that too. So the do-while loop, it has a bit of a funny syntax. It says do something, and then after that check its condition, and the condition looks like this. So let's, yeah, I don't know, let's just make, let's make a string. S, we don't have that yet, so that's okay. Hi guys. And here I'm going to say print s, and then here I'm going to say s equals s plus itself. So I'm just doubling it. And here I'm going to say do this while s.length is smaller than 1000. I think this is some super useful code. Anyone has a clue what this does? Yes. So this is just going to say hi guys, and then hi guys double, and then 4 times, 8 times, etc. until the length. So it has more than until it's, yeah, until it has 1000 or more characters. So let's run it. There you go. And it's actually there quite fast, as you can see. So trick question. What does it do now? Yes, so some people are falling for my trick question, and some others, they see the trick. So it's not printing nothing, because the do while loop, it's going to execute before checking the condition. So it's first going to print hi guys. Then after that, it's going to say s plus s. So it's going to be hi guys, hi guys. And then it's going to say, while the length is smaller than 0. That's not the case. So then it's done immediately. So it doesn't go back up again. So it's going to print hi guys exactly 1 time right now. There we go. Good. Any other questions up this point? Not getting anything? I think that's good, right? In that case, you're up again. So I'm going to put this lecture on YouTube so you can watch it again. And I'm going to put some small clips on there about the topics of this week with the homework beneath it. So you know what sources you can study to get more in-depth knowledge about these topics, and you know what code homework you can do. Any other questions? No, then I'm going to let you guys go. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I hope to have you all back here next week. In the meantime, don't be afraid to reach out. If you have any questions, just put them under the YouTube videos. Bye-bye. Yes, thank you all for joining.